Good evening, everyone, or afternoon, depending on where you're calling in from. Welcome to our student loan repayment workshop, unpacking the latest student loan changes and what they mean for you. We're going to get started here right now while folks trickle in. Just a reminder, and we'll say this a lot throughout the workshop, today's date is November 13th. All information is accurate and correct as of today. So we are Student Debt Crisis Center. Our team is joining us today. We have both Sabrina's and Angel. We are a national advocacy organization with more than 2 million supporters calling for fundamental reforms to student loan policies and to end the student loan debt crisis once and for all. We also want to shout out a special thank you to our current funders at the Annie E. Casey Foundation for helping provide these workshops to you. This is funded by Annie E. Casey. We'd like to thank them. However, all of this information that's being presented is that from our team at Student Debt Crisis Center and does not reflect the opinions of the foundation. So just some quick reminders. Please use the Q&A function to ask your questions. We appreciate comments in the chat. However, your questions will only be answered in the Q&A box, and we will do our best to answer as many of your questions as possible. Any information shared on today's clinic pertains to the current guidelines and rules, as I said at the top. And then also, a recording will be provided to anyone who has registered and attended this workshop. So what are we going to cover today? So today will be a lot of information. We'll do our best for you to break it down as much as possible. But how do I know what type of loan I have? What updates, if any, are going on with the SAVE plan? What are my repayment plan options? If you're behind on payments, what can you do? What are your loan forgiveness options? That's mostly the public service loan forgiveness program and some other smaller programs. Just a friendly reminder, we are not financial counselors or attorneys. We are advocates and experts here. So let's go over some recent federal updates. So there is a continuing reduction in force, or RIF, at the Department of Education. This happened during the loan shutdown, or I'm sorry, the government shutdown. We saw even more people were laid off, or the reduction in force of there's less people right now at the Department of Education. What this means is delayed processing times, fears of delays in program implementation. Overall, not a good thing. We hope to see those folks come back at some point, but right now there's no scheduled plan for them to come back. In addition, as you can see, this impacts things like income-driven repayment, where we are still seeing major processing delays, over 1 million pending applications. The SAVE plan and the lowest monthly payment option have been removed from the application. So borrowers, and we'll get more in depth on this, can no longer apply for the SAVE plan. If you're in it, that's a different story. And you can no longer accept or check off, the lowest monthly payment option. On the bright side, the IRS integration feature, where you can, connect the IRS with your student loan repayment or IDR application, maybe, and we are hearing from a lot of borrowers that this is the fastest way to have your income-driven repayment application process. Don't worry, Sabrina Ashley will go more in depth on that during her section. Currently ongoing are negotiated rulemaking. So these are regulatory changes and committees that will implement the changes for things like the One Big Beautiful Bill or the OBBA Act. There's the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Negotiated Rulemaking, which changes qualifying employers. The final rule is out. That does not mean it's implemented. And that's another thing we're going to go through. But nothing has changed yet when it comes to public service loan forgiveness. If that's something you're coming to our workshop concerned about, there will be changes potentially next year on both the public service loan forgiveness and through the RISE negotiated rulemaking changes to major overhaul changes to the entire student loan system. We're not going to cover a lot of that today. We do have an upcoming workshop in December. I'm sure our team will share a link that will cover all of those major overhaul changes. Today, we're going to talk about what's actually happening right now in the student loan space. In addition, defaulted loans collections were given the green light to resume in May of 2025. To date, I don't believe anyone has actually started seeing their wages garnished or collections, although many defaulted borrowers have received notices that the collections will resume. We've also been told that with the government, sadly, with the government reopening, one of the drawbacks to that is they're going to ramp up the garnishments. Social Security collections offsets have been suspended. So if you are collecting Social Security and in default, you will not have your Social Security or a portion of that garnished. But those not in Social Security, they are expecting wage garnishments to begin very shortly. In terms of the SAVE plan forbearance, interest began accruing on August 1st. This is just the interest. People still do not have to make a payment on the SAVE plan. However, some borrowers are, because they don't like the fact that the interest is now accruing to their overall loan balance. And then for income-driven repayment loan forgiveness, this is new. Loan discharges are going to be issued for folks enrolled in income contingent repayments, income-based repayments, and pay as you earn who have reached their IDR or income-driven repayment thresholds due to a recent court ruling. So prior income contingent ICR and pay were not like in this, they were in this limbo space and they were not seeing their loans discharged if they had reached the desired amount of time. That has changed. Additional action is required for SAVE folks who reach the threshold. If you meet the payment threshold by December 31st, you hit your 250 or 280, 300 credit count, and it will still remain tax-free, even if it's discharged next year. You may have seen just yesterday or the day before, there was a lot in the news about this big tax bomb. Anyone that reaches the threshold after December 31st of this year, unfortunately, will be taxed. And we're going to go more in depth on that. But just something to keep in mind, if you hit that desired amount of credits before December 31st of 2025, you will not have to pay taxes on that forgiven amount, even if it's in January 1st of 2026. Okay, so updates on the SAVE plan. We know a lot of you have questions on SAVE. The case is still ongoing. I wish I had some big update for you if you've joined us prior in the last few months. Unfortunately, there has still not been a change on the court side. When it comes to the courts, all borrowers enrolled in SAVE are in a forbearance, meaning no payment is required. However, I just mentioned, but August 1st, interest began accruing for anyone enrolled in SAVE. Time in the SAVE forbearance does not count towards public service loan forgiveness or income-driven repayment cancellation. If you're looking to complete public service loan forgiveness, you can apply for the PSLF buyback, which Sabrina Calazans will cover later on in this workshop, to try to buy back time spent in the SAVE forbearance and potentially have that count towards PSLF. You cannot do that with your income-driven repayment time. The SAVE plan will go away, whether it be through the courts, through the lawsuit of the courts, or because of the OBBA, the reconciliation big budget bill that was passed over the summer. At the latest, SAVE would phase out July 1st of 2028. We encourage you to start looking into your plan options and plan accordingly. And I'm going to go over that in just a second. In addition, it's like I said, it's either going to be July 1st, 2028, or more likely a court decision that will resolve SAVE long before that. The number one question we get on every workshop: should I get out of SAVE and apply for another income-driven repayment plan? If you draw your eyes to the bottom of this, we always say staying in or getting out is a personal decision. There is no right or wrong answer. Every situation is different. So you may consider getting out of SAVE if you want to receive your PSLF credits, if you want to receive your income driven repayment credits, if you're close to the end of forgiveness, the 240 or the 300 credits needed to, to switch in so you can get those programs, especially for the income driven repayment benefit. You may want to consider sticking in SAVE if you're okay not receiving those credits, but you would benefit from not having to make a payment. Even though there's interest accruing, many borrowers are can't afford to make that payment. So just something to consider. Moving on. So just to give you an example, this is Amy. Amy's not a real person. Amy makes $80,000 a year as a city planner, and she is working towards PSLF. Amy has a direct loan and is currently enrolled in the SAVE program with a loan balance of $100,000. She has 115 public service loan forgiveness credits. So there's a possibility that Amy would want to switch into the new IBR plan because she's 5 credits away from public service loan forgiveness. Right now, she has a $0 payment. But if you look on the other side, if Amy switches in to a new income-based repayment, new IBR, which is an income-driven repayment plan with her loan balance of $100,000, she will have to pay $486 a month. This is where, as we said, it becomes deeply personal. Yes, she will receive those 5 months of credit for public service loan forgiveness. However, not everyone has an extra $100, let alone $486 a month right now to pay on their student loans. Later on, Sabrina Calazans will go through the buyback program because that is another option for Amy. And with that, I will switch it over to Sabrina Ashley to go over student loan types and servicers.
Awesome. Thanks, Natalia. All right, so let's get into loan types. And this is important information for everyone just to understand their situation and what the programs that we're going to be talking about today apply to you all. So we've broken this down into a chart for you, and you'll notice that we're not really going to touch on private loans. We're going to focus on federal student loans tonight. And you can see that we have 3 main buckets of loans. We have direct loans, Perkins loans, and FFELP loans. And Perkins and FFELP loans are not given out anymore. A Perkins loan is a loan that was given out by an institution. And then a FFELP loan, or a Federal Family Education Loan Program loan, very long name there, is also no longer given out. It's typically commercially held, although it can be held by the Department of Education as well. And there are several different types of FFELP loans. So you might log into your account and see that you have a subsidized Stafford FFELP loan, or it might say just FEL without the P on the end. There's unsubsidized FFELP Plus, FFELP Consolidation, and FFELP Parent Plus as well. And then we have our direct loans, and those loans are going to be the loans that are given out more recently. So if you have newer loans, maybe I guess within the last 10 years now, you would probably have a direct loan, and you can see that there are also several different types here: direct subsidized, direct unsubsidized, direct graduate plus, direct parent plus, and direct consolidation loans. And the final note here is that due to the OBBBA that passed recently, there will no longer be direct graduate plus loans given out starting July 1st, 2026. So that's just a little change that is coming in the future if you are currently in school or if you have people in your life that are going to be in graduate programs. So with your loan, you get a loan servicer, and basically this is a company that is designated to manage your account. So this is where you'll actually go to make your payment on your loans. We have a few common ones here. I think a lot of people have probably heard of Mohila. We also have Nelnet, CRI, Ed Financial, Aidvantage, Heartland, Sloan Servicing, and AES. And these will be listed in your studentaid.gov account, which I believe we'll go over as well. So, it can be difficult to understand what type of loan you have if you have a federal or a private loan. So we have listed a few common private loan servicers here. They're typically held by banks like Discover, Wells Fargo, or PNC. And then they can also be held by private or refinancing companies like Navient, Credible, Earnest. I know College Ave is a common one. SoFi, of course, Sally Mae, Higher Education Servicing Corporation, and then the confusing one because it's student loans, is that Mohila can also hold private student loans as well. So you really want to look at studentaid.gov to see if your loans show up there. That's going to indicate that they are federal student loans on studentaid.gov. All right, and how to use studentaid.gov. First and foremost, you want to make sure that you type www.studentaid.gov directly into your browser. Unfortunately, there are some scams out there, people who could be charging you money for loan discharge. That is not a real option. So please be careful while you guys are logging in. And this is where you're going to come for any questions about your federal loans or any programs that may be available to you. If you are having difficulty logging in or resetting your password, you can call this number on the screen, 1-800-433-3243, or you can go to the website here and you guys will get a recording and a copy of this deck. So you will have that in the future. So once you've logged in, you'll kind of come to this home page, and we call this the dashboard. And in order to navigate this page, you can head to your profile up top in the right corner. But we are going to take a look at the My Aid section where we've highlighted the View Details button. And this is going to give us a detailed look at your student loans. So once you click on the View Details button, you will come to this next screen. And you'll see that this person has 11 loans. You'll have maybe a similar number, more or less, and then you will want to click on the View Breakdown button because while this screen is beneficial, it shows you your total balance and then the principal and interest breakdown. It doesn't really tell you anything else about your specific loans. So we're going to hit View Breakdown again. And then you'll come to this screen. And this screen will break your loans down by servicer. So you can see that the top blue bar are going to be loans held by the Department of Education / Mohila. That's how you know that these are federal loans held by Mohila. And then you're going to see this bottom one that is held by Arcadia University, and that is an institution, so you can tell that those loans were Perkins loans. So once you hit View Loans again, you'll come to this page, and this is where you'll get the specific loan breakdown. And you can see here that this person has subsidized loans and unsubsidized loans. Looking at the top bar, the top white bar here, we have highlighted the loan status and the repayment plan, and you can see that this person is in the Save Forbearance. It'll tell you when you took out the loan, what your interest rate is, and then also the total balance of your loan. So that is just a quick preview of how to use studentaid.gov and how to kind of navigate it. And now we're going to get into student loan repayment options. So, another chart for you all to kind of visualize what happens when you go into repayment. If you don't take any action, you go straight into the standard plan. And the standard plan can also be listed as the level plan on some of your servicer websites. So just keep that in mind. If you see level, it means standard plan. And basically, that is a 10-year repayment plan. We'll get into some details there. You also have other options. So there's the fixed alternative plans, and we have three different types: graduated repayment, and extended graduated repayment. And then we have the income-driven repayment plans, which we will get into later on. We have ICR, IBR, pay, and save. Two notes here, you can no longer apply or enroll in the SAVE plan, and not everybody is eligible for IBR and pay. So the 10-year standard plan is exactly what it sounds like. It is what you're initially placed in if you don't take any other action. It's a 10-year plan with fixed monthly payments, and you end up paying off the entire loan balance. So there's no forgiveness aspect here. It is available to folks with unconsolidated loans, or if you have consolidated loans with a balance less than $7,500, you can also be in the 10-year standard plan. And folks should really consider this plan if you really want to make a dent in your debt, if you're worried about that interest piece, or if you just want to get out of the system quickly. But there are more affordable plans and options for borrowers who are struggling. So, with the standard plan, for loans that are consolidated, it becomes more of a 10 to 30 year repayment plan. And you can see the timeline breakdown with the balances in the screenshot here that we have. So these monthly payments are calculated to pay off the loan in that certain repayment period bracket. If you have consolidated loans, your repayment period could be up to that 30 years, but it's based on your loan balance. So it's not based off of income like in the IDR plans. It's just based off of your loan balance and doesn't take into account anything else in your life. And again, there's no loan forgiveness aspect to these plans, and it doesn't count towards income-driven repayment forgiveness or public service loan forgiveness. We also have the fixed alternative plans. These you do have to apply for, but they don't have a forgiveness aspect to them. So they're more like the standard plan, and they're essentially just variations of the standard plan. So we have extended repayment, which is eligible for all loans except for Perkins loans, but you can consolidate your Perkins loans into a direct consolidation loan to make them eligible for the plan. The payments here are going to be fixed, and your repayment timeline is 25 years, and it's only available to folks with balances higher than $30,000. Then we have the graduated plan, which the loan eligibility is the same. The repayment timeline here differs from loan type to loan type. So FEL and direct consolidation loans can have repayment timelines from 10 to 30 years based on your loan balance. All other loans, it's going to be a 10-year plan. And then this is where payments start low and increase every 2 years. And then with the extended graduated plan, it's a combination of those two previous plans. The loan eligibility is the same, and the repayment timeline is 25 years, and your payment amount is going to go up every 2 years. And then we also have that $30,000 balance threshold there. So the extended graduated plan is only available to folks with balances higher than $30,000. So that's a quick look at the standard plan and the alternative plans. And now we're going to get into the income-driven repayment plans with Sabrina.
Thanks, Sabrina Ashley. All right, let's jump right into IDR plans or income-driven repayment plans. So we've been seeing a couple questions here, so hopefully we can break things down for folks. But essentially, one of the benefits of income-driven repayment plans is that the monthly payments for these plans are calculated as a percentage of discretionary income. So it's going to be based on your income and your family size, not your loan amount. The standard plan, as Sabrina Ashley was talking about, is based on your loan amount. So if you have a high loan balance, it could be a very high payment. Now, if you have a low income or you have a high balance, this could be really beneficial for you. Um, and it could also help to prevent default and delinquency, which we will also talk about soon. This could be especially helpful for folks with lower incomes, those who may have lost a job, or who have decreased incomes. The loan forgiveness for income-driven repayment plans is possible after payments are made between 20 to 25 years, depending on the plan. We're going to talk about a trick that we have for identifying the number of IDR credits that folks have. I know that's a question that we've seen a couple times here in the Q&A, so we will discuss that in just a few moments here. It's also really important to note that if your wages decrease or you become unemployed, you can recertify your lower income at any time to secure your lower monthly payments. So essentially, you can call your loan servicer and tell them, "I'm currently unemployed. I'm not working. I'm not making any money, or my income has decreased from the last time that I recertified my income," so that they can then reflect those changes in your monthly payment and secure that for the next 12 months. Now, it's also important to note that you will need to recertify every 11 months what your income is, what your family size is, so that they can adjust that as needed. This is usually done online, or you can also do it through paper form. But it's important to note that right now, no one needs to recertify before February 2026, and many servicers are already emailing or sending notices to borrowers saying you actually don't have to recertify for much later than that. So if you're getting a notice about recertification, that's probably what it is that you're seeing. All right, let's talk about the impact of IDR on taxes. Again, we're not tax professionals, but we just want to talk and give a high level overview of what we're seeing and hearing from folks. So when you're thinking about tax filing, if you file married, filed jointly, both incomes are taken into consideration when calculating your monthly payment. If you are separated or divorced, or you can't reasonably access your spouse's current income information, the Department of Education won't factor in your spouse's income or their loan debt when calculating your monthly payment. If you are married and file separately, they are not going to consider the spousal income in their calculation. As Natalia also said earlier, December 31st, 2025 marks the end of tax-free student loan cancellation, which is for income-driven repayment plans specifically. This does not include public service loan forgiveness, and this is on the federal level. And unless it's extended by Congress, that is going to be the cutoff date. The good news is that um, there is that provision where if you qualify for loan forgiveness by this date of December 31st, you'll have it forgiven tax-free. Now, for folks who don't fall into that category and have their loans forgiven beginning January 1st, 2026, and become eligible on that date or after, IDR student loan forgiveness will be taxed as income. So just as an example here, if John has $50,000 forgiven and he falls in a 22% tax bracket, he could owe taxes as if he earned an additional $50,000 in income for that year, which would result in an estimated tax bill of $11,000, which is not small, right? A lot of folks are not wanting to pay that sort of tax bill. So just be mindful of that as a possibility here if that provision is not extended by Congress. It's also really important to note that when you are applying for an income-driven repayment plan, there is the option to integrate um, your information with the IRS, which would allow the Department of Education to communicate with the IRS. If you provide consent, the department can pull your income information from your last year's tax filing. You can also manually recertify your income every 11 months. But this essentially, this IRS integration we're seeing has resulted in people's applications being processed more quickly. So that is, if you're trying to get into another repayment plan quickly, if you're trying to take advantage of public service loan forgiveness and get out of save and move into another plan, this could be a pathway for you to have it done more quickly. All right, so as we're talking here tonight, we're going to say the word IDR a lot. So what is IDR? IDR is the umbrella term. It's the category and the name of the overall program. So I'm going to try and say income-driven repayment as much as I can, but it is a mouthful. So excuse me if I shorten it to IDR. Then there's IBR. We often get the question, what is the difference? IBR is a type of income-driven repayment or IDR plan. It falls under that umbrella term or that category. So IBR, pay, ICR, and save are all types of income-driven repayment plans. And we're going to keep saying those words throughout the night, so apologies if it gets a bit annoying. All right, so looking at the income-driven repayment plan options, Sabrina Ashley was giving us a bit of a preview, but here we just want to break down what that looks like, giving you a visual. So for the pay-as-you-earn plan, it looks at 10% of your discretionary income over a repayment term of 20 years. The newer version of IBR, which is for loans issued on or after July 1st, 2014, looks at 10% of discretionary income over 20 years. The older version of the IBR plan or income-based repayment is 15% over a 25-year term, and the ICR or income contingent repayment plan looks at 20% over 25 years. Now, through this One Big Beautiful Bill Act, there are going to be some changes where the income-based repayment plan limited eligibility for folks who didn't qualify due to a financial hardship provision that is required to enroll in that plan. That is going to be removed at some point. We're still figuring out if those applications are being accepted by the servicers or if this is still going to take a little bit of time. But they're getting rid of that provision. So if in the past you applied, you didn't qualify for IBR because of that provision, soon you'll be able to apply again and we'll be able to enroll in the plan. So just keep an eye out for that. And there's also going to be changes to the plans that are available to Parent Plus loans, which we will discuss shortly as well. All right, so with the Parent Plus loan, so if you have a Parent Plus loan that is issued before July 1st, 2026, if you haven't consolidated the loan into a direct consolidation loan, you will need to do so before July 1st, 2026, in order to enroll the loan in an income-driven repayment plan. So if you want to enroll the Parent Plus loan in an income-driven repayment plan, you will need to consolidate, and our recommendation is to do so sooner rather than later. Because of these provisions that are going to change the student loan system, the loan needs to be issued before this date. And so it takes a little bit of time to consolidate, and we'll discuss that soon. But we recommend that folks take action now, take action, by the spring, so to guarantee that your loan will be issued before July 1st, 2026, which will leave you the options of enrolling the loan in the income contingent repayment plan. That plan is going to phase out at some point, but it is still an option for Parent Plus loans. And also, there's going to be this new change, which will allow for Parent Plus loans to access the income-based repayment or the IBR plan. Now, I know this is overwhelming. This is a lot of information. So I'll explain what's going on right now versus what will happen. So right now, if you have a Parent Plus loan, you would need to consolidate the loan to enroll it in the income contingent repayment plan. So once that happens, later in this upcoming winter, the department is set to expand access to not just ICR for Parent Plus loans, but you'll also be able to enroll the loan in the IBR plan. However, what they're telling us right now is that actually you need to enroll in the income contingent repayment plan first, make at least one payment on the plan before you can then switch into the IBR plan. The IBR, the income-based repayment plan, as I just said on the last slide, looks at 10 or 15% of your discretionary income versus 20% on the income contingent plan. So for Parent Plus loans, that could result in a lower monthly payment. Again, this is a lot of information. We'll continue to share this and try and break it down for you. But what you need to know is that if you want to enroll a Parent Plus loan in an income-driven repayment plan, it needs to be consolidated and issued before July 1st, 2026. And Parent Plus loans also are able to enroll the loans in the alternative plans like extended, graduated, and extended graduated. However, there is no loan forgiveness attached to those options. Now, if we're looking at an example here of Jack's income is 85,000. He's married with 2 kids. His spouse is a stay-at-home parent. His estimated monthly payment on other IDR plans start at $300. Since Jack is not close to IDR forgiveness, he may consider staying in Save to save money. So I saw a couple of questions here about should I get out of Save? Should I stay in Save? For folks who are not close to the 20 to 25-year mark, you may consider, as Natalia said, staying in the SAVE plan. In Jack's case here, he's not close to IDR forgiveness. He might be struggling, cost of living is high, things are happening. He might want to stay in SAVE. So again, this is just a reminder that the decisions on which repayment plan you enroll in is up to you at the end of the day. Okay. So how do I identify monthly payments on different plans? There's a few options here. You can go to studentaid.gov where you'll find the loan simulator. It's pretty easy to find. Someone from my team, if you could please drop it into the chat here for folks. The downside of the loan simulator is that it's not 100% accurate. So it could be that it gives you an estimated amount, but maybe that's not as close as it should be to what it will be. And so just be mindful that it's not 100% accurate. It is a good tool if you don't have time to call your servicer and wait on the phone for those accurate numbers. But if you do have time to wait around and wait for your servicer and get that information, my recommendation is to call the servicer and see if they can share that with you. You can ask them, what repayment plan am I eligible for, and what are the estimated monthly payments? If you're working towards public service loan forgiveness, you can also request them to share the plans that are eligible for public service loan forgiveness so that you maintain eligibility for public service. Now, there's also another tool that, again, if someone from my team can drop that in the chat here, which is a tool from EdCap, which does a really good job as well of calculating monthly payments. We find that it's very similar to the loan simulator. And it also has an estimate for a new plan that's coming next year. We're not going to talk about it today, but it's called the WRAP plan. So if you go through it, you can get a sense of if that's going to be an option for you in the future. So again, I recommend folks check out these tools, get a sense of what your monthly payments will be on different plans, especially if you're trying to leave the SAVE plan. All right. So what to know before applying for an IDR plan? You'll need to know your permanent and/or mailing address, family size information. If you choose not to opt into the IRS integration, as we discussed earlier, you'll need to provide income documentation. So you'll choose one, either a W-2, a pay stub, an employer letter certifying your gross income, a bank account statement, anything to document your income. And again, when you're applying, you must know what plan you want to enroll in because they've removed the option that automatically selected the lowest monthly payment for you. That no longer exists. So you'll have to make a selection. All right, we just went over this, so we're good to skip over. All right, so if we're looking at IDR credit counts, for folks who want to know about how many credits you have for income-driven repayments. If someone can also drop this in the chat, and letting folks know that in the chat, sometimes here on Zoom, you can't copy things directly. So we are going to send this out via email to you tomorrow. So keep an eye out for that email from us. You can also try typing it out. I know it's a little bit lengthy, but if you look at the steps here, we recommend that you start off logging into studentaid.gov. You must be logged in, and you can paste this link into a separate tab. Once you do so, it's going to be very scary to look at, but there's going to be a box at the top left corner that says pretty print to make it easier to read. And again, this is not guaranteed to work for everyone. It's just something that we found has worked for many folks, but again, not guaranteed to work for everyone. So on the next slide here, we'll take a look and see what that will look like. So when you paste that into your browser, this is what you're going to see. It's not an error. This is what it looks like. And then in that top left corner, in that box there underneath the arrow, it says pretty print. You would click on that. And then on the right-hand side here, the screenshot is what it will then look like. It's going to kind of break down into different groups. And it's grouped into the type of income-driven repayment plan. So it'll say type followed by the plan name. So the first blurb here, it says type, it says ICR. It also will tell you if you're eligible for it. But what I want you to look for is the qualifying count. When you look for the qualifying count, it will tell you how many credits you have under that repayment plan. So in this case, this person has 54 qualifying payments under ICR. And then the next step that we recommend is looking for forgiveness required payments and forgiveness remaining payments. So in this person's case, it says forgiveness required payments are 300. So 300 credits is what you're working towards. So this person has 54 out of the 300, which means that they have 246 credits remaining, or 246 payments. For folks that are close or at the mark, if it says qualifying payment count 300 and forgiveness required payments 300, and then it says forgiveness remaining payments 0, that means that you've reached the threshold for that plan, making you eligible for forgiveness. So that's really great news for folks. If that's you, that is really great. It means you could receive a notice soon about your loans being forgiven. If that's not you, at least we know how many remaining payments are left until you reach that IDR threshold. So again, this is a quick trick here for folks on how to identify that information. I've also been hearing from folks who have reached out to the Department of Education lately. I'm going to drop the contact information here. And they've actually been able to ask them to share the IDR credit counts, and they actually are sharing it with folks. So if you use the link that I shared here in the chat, you can email the Department of Ed and they can provide it to you in writing, which I think is the best thing to have versus over the phone. So I do recommend going about that way as well if you can't figure out this trick. All right, moving along, federal loan consolidation. We talked a little bit about consolidation when we talked about Parent Plus loans. So what is consolidation? This is converting older loans like FFEL loans or Perkins loans into a direct loan so that you're now eligible for different programs like public service loan forgiveness, income-driven repayment plans, or it can also be combining multiple loans into a single loan. When you're consolidating, you are creating a new loan and you will receive a new payoff date. Consolidations can take 30 to 60 or more days to process. You can consolidate a single loan. So if you have a single Parent Plus loan, it can be consolidated into a direct consolidation loan. Some things to consider: a single FFEL consolidation, or Perkins loan can be consolidated to benefit from public service loan forgiveness. If you're consolidating an existing direct consolidation loan, you must have at least one other loan you are combining it with, because you can't consolidate a direct consolidation loan. It's reached its peak. It can't go any further. So you need to consolidate it with something else. And we also do not recommend anyone consolidate their loans on or after July 1st, 2026, because that will limit your repayment plan options. It's going to basically it's going to make things a lot more complicated for folks. The options are going to be less affordable. It's just going to be a little bit tricky after or beginning on July 1st, 2026. It's also important to note that due to the current regulations, if you consolidate right now, you may erase some or all of your repayment history and public service loan forgiveness progress by creating a new loan. This could extend your payoff date and reset your IDR credits to zero, and result in a weighted average of PSLF credits. If you're going to consolidate to take advantage of public service loan forgiveness, the recommendation is to submit an employer certification form first before submitting the consolidation application. I know that's very wonky, but what it all boils down to is that you are creating a new loan through consolidation, and that can reset things in terms of repayment and prolong your repayment period. Do you want to apply for a consolidation? You can go to studentaid.gov. There's an online application. If you're consolidating to enroll the loans in an income-driven repayment plan, you can do so in a single application. It gives you the option to do so, to consolidate and enroll the loan into the IDR plan. The processing times are delayed and can take upwards of 30 to 90 days to process your application, and you should be placed into a processing forbearance during that time. All right. What to do if you're struggling to repay your loans? This is a really important section here. So if you're struggling to afford your monthly payments, if you've already checked your eligibility for income-driven repayment plans and you still can't afford the minimum monthly payments that you're being quoted, you may want to consider applying for a forbearance or a deferment as temporary emergency options. A forbearance will allow you to temporarily stop making monthly payments or temporarily make smaller payments. Usually this does not grant any progress towards forgiveness or loan payoff during a forbearance, and interest does accrue. Some folks choose to pay the interest during a forbearance, but if you're struggling financially and that's not an option for you, that is absolutely okay. For a deferment, it also allows you to temporarily stop making payments, and interest does accrue. For some loan types will not accrue interest. There are different types of deferments, excuse me. And there are specific eligibility requirements and forms that need to be filled out. So a forbearance is more general, a deferment is more specific. So you can be granted a deferment if you're undergoing cancer treatment, if you're going through economic hardship, if you're in a graduate fellowship, military service, and post-active duty student deferment, rehabilitation training, or unemployment deferment. So again, more specific when it comes to deferment, but these are options for you if you are struggling with your monthly payment. Consider taking advantage of one of these instead of not making your monthly payments, which can result in default and delinquency. All right, so what happens if I don't make payments? So one day past due on your monthly payment, your loans are already considered delinquent. The loan will remain delinquent until the missed payments are made up or a deferment or a forbearance is granted for that delinquent period. If your loan continues delinquent, meaning you don't make any payments after 90 days, the delinquency is going to be reported to all of the major credit bureaus. So you will see a hit to your credit. You'll see a drop there. And then if you continue to not make payments up to 270 days, which is about 9 months, the student loan is officially in default. Some consequences of default include tax refunds being withheld, wage garnishment, ineligibility for federal assistance, like federal mortgage programs, financial aid, things of that nature. But if you are in default, don't worry. There are options and ways to get out of it. There's loan rehabilitation. There's also loan consolidation that can be used to get the loan out of default. And it's important to note that if you have federal Perkins loans, your loan can actually be placed into default after 1 day of missed payments. So how to know if you are in default? If you log into studentaid.gov, that's, I think, the simplest way to find it. Usually if someone is in default, at the banner, as soon as you log into your dashboard, you'll see this red banner at the top, and it will say you have, and then it'll say the number of loans that you have currently in default. So if you have 10 loans in default, it'll say you have 10. on this banner. And at that point, we recommend that you take action as soon as possible to avoid wage garnishment and any negative consequences. So if we look at the next slide here, as I mentioned, loan rehabilitation and loan consolidation are some options. For loan rehab, you can make 9 on-time monthly payments over the course of 10 months. You'll work with your servicer to determine an affordable monthly payment amount, and once that is done, collections stop. Loan rehabilitation is currently a one-time opportunity. Now, there's another way to get out of default, which is loan consolidation, which might be the simplest way to get out of default. Again, this would be the process of converting or combining your loans into a direct consolidation loan, which creates a new loan. So to qualify, you must either agree to repay under an income-driven repayment plan or make 3 full on-time payments before consolidating. Again, you can consolidate a single loan as long as it's not already a single direct consolidation loan, because a single consolidation loan cannot be reconsolidated. If you are in default, we do recommend that you get in touch with the default resolution group at 1-800-621-3115. The default resolution group can basically tell you the status of your loans, if your loans have been moved to a default servicer. They can walk you through your options and also help you to take advantage of loan rehabilitation and loan consolidation. So they are a good resource for you to use. So today we talked about a couple of forbearances, so I want to just go over this really quickly. So again, there is a hardship or discretionary forbearance. This is typically used when you're struggling to afford your monthly payments. You'll need to apply for this forbearance. It's not automatic, and it can be done so via mail, online, or on the phone with your servicer, which is recommended. Um, Interest does accrue, and the time spent in this forbearance does not count towards IDR or PSLF. If you're in the SAVE administrative forbearance, this is an involuntary forbearance. No application was required, and all 8 million folks enrolled in SAVE were placed into it automatically. No payments are required during this time, and interest is accruing as of August 1st this year. You will also not receive PSLF or IDR credits for the time spent in the SAVE forbearance. Now, a processing forbearance is what you are placed in when you are switching from one income-driven repayment plan to another. So if you're getting out of SAVE and you want to go into a plan like IBR, you should be placed into a processing forbearance. I think I accidentally skipped over that slide, y'all. I apologize. But folks who apply for an IDR plan are, again, placed into it. You should be placed into it. And if you're not, you can call your servicer and demand to be placed into it. Up to 60 days of this processing forbearance should count towards public service loan forgiveness credits, and interest does accrue during that time. So those are just, again, a recap of the different forbearances that we've discussed today. All right, with that, I'm going to toss it over to Angel to talk us through the public service loan forgiveness program. Angel?
Thank you so much, Sabrina, and thank you to everyone for sticking on. We're going to go ahead and dive into PSLF. There has been a lot of questions in the chat pertaining to PSLF, so let's go ahead and get into it. So, Public Service Loan Forgiveness, PSLF. The program started as it was enacted by Congress, signed into law in October of 2007, and it was a bipartisan plan to go ahead and offer loan forgiveness for folks who make 120 cumulative payments. That is 10 years of payments towards their student loans. And like I mentioned, the payments are cumulative, not consecutive. Now, there is an intent to get combined benefits of the PSLF program. If you sign up for an income-driven repayment plan and pursue public service loan forgiveness, you should be receiving the maximum benefit. For example, if you work for a PSLF eligible employer for 10 years while you're in repayment, the goal is for you to pay the least amount of money back for your student loans while being enrolled in an IDR plan and having the rest forgiven through the public service loan forgiveness program. One important thing to keep in mind is that for PSLF, there is a couple of eligibility requirements. So first things first, you need to have a direct loan. That is a question to ask. If you have a direct loan, you're already checking off one box. Does your employer qualify? We'll touch on in a bit which employers qualify and which do not. Are you in a qualifying repayment plan? And also document your employment using the PSLF form. Once you reach 120 credits, you could go ahead and log onto your account on studentaid.gov, go to the PSLF help tool, and click the button that says you've completed 120 credits to go ahead and begin the processing of your public service loan forgiveness. Now, what qualifies for public service loan forgiveness? For loans, it is all direct loans, direct subsidized, direct unsubsidized, direct graduate plus loans, direct parent plus loans, and direct consolidation loans. For repayment plans, the 10-year standard plan qualifies, income contingent repayment qualifies ICR, pay as you earn or pay, and income-based repayment IBR. For employers, all levels of government qualify. Tribal, state, federal, local, all of those are eligible employers. 501c3 nonprofits and other critical public service such as firefighters, military, along those lines. Now, what doesn't qualify? Those FAFELP loans do not qualify, nor do Perkins loans. However, you can consolidate these loans into a single direct loan to become eligible for PSLF. Private loans do not qualify for public service loan forgiveness, and time and default does not qualify for public service loan forgiveness. If you are defaulted on your loan, you could go ahead and get it taken out of default to become eligible for public service loan forgiveness. For repayment plans, fixed alternative plans do not go ahead and qualify for the public service loan forgiveness. The standard plan that is longer than 10 years does not qualify for public service loan forgiveness, and most deferments and forbearances, including in-school deferment, do not qualify. For employers, if you are a government contractor, so you're working for the government but not as a direct employee, that does not qualify. 501c4 nonprofits and political groups do not qualify for public service loan forgiveness. And labor unions. If you are employed by a labor union, that is not considered to be a qualifying employer. One important thing to highlight, and I saw this question in the chat a couple of times, that PSLF, public service loan forgiveness, is tax-free, as is it was enacted by Congress when it was signed into law. So that is a question I have been seeing lingering around. Now, the public service loan forgiveness buyback program, what is it? You can buy back certain months in your payment history and make them qualifying payments for public service loan forgiveness. This could also include time in the save forbearance. Specifically, you can buy back months that don't count as qualifying payments because you were in an ineligible deferment or forbearance status. For example, time spent in school deferment cannot be bought back, and it could also be used for time in an ineligible repayment plan. One important thing to highlight is that there's a huge backlog of more than 70K PSLF buyback applications. So we've been seeing very little people getting this processed. Now, how to benefit. Buyback is only available if you have an estimated 120 months of qualifying employment and you're buying back the months in forbearance or deferment that would result in you getting that public service loan forgiveness. You must submit a buyback request and make that extra payment of at least as much as they would you would have owed under an income-driven repayment plan during the months that you are trying to buy it back. And there has been some excuse me, changes to public service loan forgiveness eligibility, specifically surrounding what is considered to be an eligible employer. This final PSLF rule was published recently and is set to take effect on July of 2026. Important thing to note, there are lawsuits currently surrounding this. There are two, and the date can change due to the surrounding litigation. But as it's written, the Department of Education will disqualify groups that are engaging, and this is language from the rule itself, violating federal immigration law, facilitating illegal immigration, violating state law, and providing gender affirming care for transgender youth. This puts employers at risk of losing their PSLF eligibility if they are providing, for example, gender affirming care at hospitals, or if they're nonprofits that are supporting immigrants, or universities and state local governments in sanctuary cities and states. This will have detrimental effects on people as a whole across the country. And for an example to paint the picture, if you're an administrative assistant at a hospital that is deemed ineligible because it provides gender affirming care, you will no longer be able to accrue new PSLF credits after that employer has been deemed ineligible. So we'll be providing updates on this as new updates arise, but that's what is happening. Like I mentioned before, this is set to kick in on or after July 1st, 2026, pending the court litigation. If the employer does get deemed ineligible by the Department of Ed, they will be ineligible for 10 years, and no payment will count after that ineligibility determination for their employees as a PSLF credit. And the Department of Education will be required to inform employees of a qualifying employer if that employer's eligibility is at risk or has been lost. One important thing to highlight, that even if the employer gets deemed ineligible, past credits for people who have already accrued PSLF credits will remain intact. So those are not disappearing, and borrowers would not be able to appeal the decision once it's been determined that their employer is now ineligible. Employers can collaborate also with the Department of Education to implement a quote unquote plan of corrective action to protect their PSLF status. However, this is a complete government overreach and violation of First Amendment rights, since the Department of Education is picking and choosing what line of work gets to be considered public service and what doesn't. So this is really alarming and something to keep an eye out. I will be providing y'all with the latest updates pertaining to PSLF. And I'm going to go ahead and toss it back to Sabrina Calazans.
Thanks, Angel. We are almost wrapping things up here, folks. We just want to talk about a few other important programs here. So looking at the next slide here, these are some other pathways to loan forgiveness and discharges. Um, One of the big ones here is total and permanent disability discharge, which would provide full forgiveness on your federal student loans if you are totally and permanently disabled. You can have, or you must have documentation from either Veterans Affairs, the Social Security Administration, if you receive SSDI, or a medical professional to sign off for you, to vouch and say that you are eligible for this program. There used to be a 3-year income monitoring period for TPD. That no longer is the case. And borrowers qualify for TPD if they have a mental or health condition that is expected or has lasted 5 years and is preventing them from getting substantially gainful employment. So if that is you or someone you know that is a possibility for discharge, look into TPD. There's also borrower defense to repayment, which is a program for folks who have been defrauded by their schools or misled. There's teacher loan forgiveness, which is an option for teachers. It doesn't provide full forgiveness, but provides a smaller amount and is based on a shorter amount of time compared to public service loan forgiveness, but there are stricter rules for that program. There's also death discharge, meaning that in the event of a death, the loan is not passed on to a dependent, it is discharged in death. There's closed school discharge. If your school is closed within a certain amount of time, you can apply to have the loans discharged as well. There's unpaid refund if you're not paid that. That is another option. There's false certification if someone takes the loans out in your name falsely, you can have it discharged. And there's Perkins loans forgiveness, specifically for the Perkins loans. So if any of these apply to you, we recommend that you go to studentaid.gov where you can find more information and you can access the different applications for each program. And what can folks do right now? We really want to make sure that folks know who their student loan servicer is and that you have access to your account on their website. If you don't have an account on their website, we recommend that you create one. We also recommend that you save any communications, any documentation, meaning emails, letters that you've received from your servicer. Also, print, download, screenshot, and save any information that details how many public service loan forgiveness and income-driven repayment credits you have, if that is applicable to you. For Parent Plus loan borrowers who would like to enroll in the Parent Plus loans in an income-driven repayment plan, again, you will need to consolidate those Parent Plus loans and have them issued before July 1st, 2026. That's really important for folks to keep in mind. If you have issues or complaints, you can go to your representative's websites. There are casework tools that our partners have created. If someone can drop that in the chat, there's a casework tool that you can connect with their offices, but you can also go to their websites, and on there you can request assistance with a federal agency and request assistance with the Department of Education specifically. There's also state AG offices that provide assistance. We also highly recommend that you look and see if your state has an ombudsman. A student loan ombudsman is essentially the middleman that can help to resolve any situation between you and the Department of Education, help to resolve any loan issues that you're seeing. You can also visit your servicer's website. There are often chat and messaging functions. There's phone numbers and emails that you can contact. And we, again, have been hearing that folks are getting assistance through the Department of Education. There was a time where folks were not receiving assistance from the Department of Education, but it seems to have picked back up in the last few weeks. So we do recommend folks go and use that. You can ask them how many IDR credits you have, how many PSLF credits you have, and any other questions or complaints that you have to share with them. And we also want to make sure that you're aware that there are debt relief scams out there. They typically involve offering a loan consolidation or debt forgiveness in exchange for a fee. Anything regarding applying for an income-driven repayment plan or public service loan forgiveness is free of charge. Nothing at the Department of Education is costs you anything to apply or to take advantage of any program, so keep that in mind. So you might see people requesting upfront fees, claiming to be the Department of Education, making these promises of loan forgiveness. You might see some bait and switch that might include immediate loan forgiveness and deadline approaching, or any debt forgiveness in exchange for a fee. It's also really important to note that a lot of folks have been reaching out and asking about refinancing. If you refinance your student loans with a private lender, you are going to lose access to all federal student loan benefits and programs, meaning you won't have income-driven repayment plans, you won't have public service loan forgiveness, you won't have forbearances and deferments that are offered to federal student loans. Your loans are now going to be a private loan, so you will lose access to all of these programs. All right, so if you want to continue getting updates from our team, you can sign up for our mailing list. You can visit SDCC's website at studentdebtcrisis.org. You can also find us on social media at debtcrisis.org on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Blue Sky. We will typically update those with any breaking news and with any information that's really important for folks, so keep an eye out for that. We are also going to be hosting upcoming workshops. So next month on the 9th, December 9th, we're going to have another general student loan workshop going over all of these updates as well. And then on December 16th, I think this is a really important one, we are going to be discussing the major overhaul of the student loan system. So there's going to be major changes kicking in next year. And that's going to be lasting between 2026 and 2028, and it's going to impact all of us. And so if you have student loans, if you know someone that has student loans or who plans on taking on student loans, I highly recommend that you sign up for the December 16th one. If someone from my team can drop those links in the chat, that would be great. And we're also going to be sending an email tomorrow with the recording of this workshop, with these links to these upcoming workshops. With links to the trick that we've shared on IDR credits and some other resources that may be helpful for you. So keep an eye out for that as well. All right, here's just another link of a list of resources that we have for folks. And again, we'll share out resources in an email tomorrow. We do not have time for questions. I'm just taking a quick look here at the Q&A. One really big one here, death discharge, I believe is not taxed. Natalia, if I'm incorrect, please feel free to jump in, but I believe that it is not.
I think you're correct. I was thinking through that, but it's discharged to the person that passed away when we say that it's not being passed on to any loved ones. So I
Yep.
believe not, but we can get back to you.
Perfect. All right, I want to thank my team, Natalia, Sabrina, Ashley, and Angel for being here. I want to thank all of you for being here. If we did not answer your question, you can find us at our website, studentdebtcrisis.org, where you can submit questions and additional thoughts. But again, we really appreciate you for joining us tonight, for hanging on with all of this overwhelming information. And again, we'll be back next month with additional webinars, and we hope to see you then. Have a great night, everyone. Take care.